Tell me you were one of those people who spent the better part of the day yesterday just tugging at the refresh mechanisms on your phone to find out anything about Brandon Aiyuk. Tell me that you were that person. Good morning to you. Good Tuesday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports, and this is Daily Shot of Steelers. It comes your way bright and early every weekday if you're into hockey and or baseball. I also cover the Penguins and the Pirates, our other two teams in town. I hope you'll check those out as well. Aiyuk is still, of course, property of the 49ers, in spite of all kinds of internet miscreants with 10 or 15 followers to their account claiming stuff to the contrary, because everybody's got sources now. You can say anything. And the funny part of that is, if you say it out loud, nobody takes you seriously. You put it in writing and you put it on the same platform that actual reporters use, it all looks the same. And if you word it a certain way, it can sound the same. Also, and relevant, not everybody who uses these things is smart. So they'll see, here's an individual, and then they'll see the little blue check mark, which you can now buy for $8 a month to signify verification. And they go, well, I don't know. This person, they have an account that has their name and then the letters NFL after it. Sure looks official to me. Plus, I want this to happen. Therefore, I believe it. And boom, there it goes. Well, last night, a reporter out of the Bay Area who's covered the 49ers for more than 20 years, meaning somebody who actually has sources and things like that, put forth a really detailed report. And I mean so detailed that could have only come from the team, meaning the information. And I know what these look like because I've been handed stuff like that many times over the years by all three of our teams in Pittsburgh. They want some of this information out. They want to apply pressure on the other teams that are reported to be involved. The teams, in this case, according to NBC Sports' Matt Maiocco, are the Browns and the Patriots, meaning the teams that are seen as being in the running, the teams that have trade agreements in place with the Niners. Now, the way this has to operate is that Aiyuk and his agent have to reach contract terms. Aiyuk has to want to go to one of those teams. I think it would be pretty obvious that if he hasn't gone yet, he doesn't want to go to either Cleveland or to Foxborough. So then the other two teams that are mentioned here are the Steelers and the Commanders, both of whom are described in this report as being out because they didn't like the trade terms that San Francisco management put forth. So you adding all this up here? Okay, cool. So I want to revisit a couple of things here on purpose to emphasize them. There's only one report, but it's a very reliable one, and it's very obvious that the source is someone inside the San Francisco organization. The purpose, the intent for having this given to this reporter who's been covering the team for 20 years would appear to be just as obvious. And considering that Aiyuk has publicly said that he'd prefer to go to Pittsburgh or Washington, once more, I'll say it, the 49ers have everything to gain from basically having the entire scenario smoked out for all to see. Now, from there, I've got a handful of thoughts. One, I'm not interested in anything remotely resembling an overpay when it comes to the trade. The 49ers rightly see themselves as a Super Bowl contender. Why shouldn't they? They were just in it. So they'll want a roster player back. They're not just going to want draft picks. But if you reach the point where you're looking for an equivalent player, you're out of your mind. Meaning if you're the Niners. I'm not giving you back an equivalent wide receiver because the only one I've got is George Pickens and you're not getting him. I'm not giving you the offensive lineman that you want because, well, there are tackles here, but the Steelers just invested first-round picks in Broderick Jones and Troy Fautanu, and you can't have either. The reason for that is, and I'd hope this is obvious, the Steelers will still have to pay a literal price that's massive to get this player, meaning his salary, meaning the cap commitment. Whereas the Niners will be free of that cap commitment and can replace that player, maybe not right away, but certainly in the near-term future, with someone who costs just as much, and thus, theoretically, a really good player. Also irrelevant, while I've been as vocal as anybody about adding to the wide receiver room, about spending the money that you've got, I'm going to say this too, and I don't care how unpopular this is. In the Arthur Smith offense, the second wide receiver is principally a blocker. Now, I don't base that on what little time he's been in Pittsburgh. I base that on a lot of time that he spent in Atlanta. How do I know that? Because Van Jefferson, who's here now in Pittsburgh and who is in line to be that second wide receiver, wasn't even targeted 30 times over 10 games with the Falcons. What he was asked to do is what he's being asked to do here with the Steelers, here in Latrobe, and that's to block. He's a bigger, thicker receiver, 6'1", 200. He'll be able to take on most blocking assignments. Is it ideal to have Pickens and then Jefferson and then a whole lot of question marks? No, of course it isn't. Is it ideal to have a scenario in which if Pickens were to get hurt, you're basically out of luck? No, of course it isn't. My point here is that Omar Khan isn't dealing from a position of desperation. If they can get this player, great, get him. But there's no need to be overpaying, and there's definitely no need to be falling for little tricks like what the Niners appear to be playing. When we come back, J1Q. This segment of Daily Shot is brought to you by our good friends at Mike's Beer Bar. They're located on Federal Street, directly across from PNC Park. Mike has more than 500 beers on tap, including from more than 50 local breweries. Stop in and say hello. Tell Mike we sent you. Mike's Beer Bar. Today's J1Q comes from Slim, who says, "Hey DK, is there a certain player that you'd say has surprised you so far in camp as far as your expectations? Love the show. Keep up the grind." Thanks, Slim. I appreciate that. I'm heading back out to Latrobe this morning for the next practice, and we're going to know a lot more in general about this pool of players by the end of the week, because there's not only more practices, but there's also, and way more revealing, the preseason opener against the Texans. That's Friday night at Acrisure Stadium. DeMarco Ryans, by the way, said yesterday in Houston that he's planning on using his first team guys. That might only be for a series or whatever, but that's a nice test, even if it's just, equivalent to a scripted scrimmage. But to try to answer your question, the player who has surprised me, and please, there's a disclaimer here that needs to go in a great big set of parentheses. It's just been a handful of practices, a lot of them without pads. But the one who has, going by your definition of surprise, is someone that I just didn't have expectations for necessarily. It's Dante Jackson. It's not a name that, when I throw it out there, is going to get anybody excited. Whoa, yeah, Dante Jackson. I'm stoked about him. It's a whole lot more fun if I say to you that it's Peyton Wilson or somebody, right? But I know that whenever Deontay Johnson was traded to the Panthers, the initial response that almost everybody had was, wow, really? That's it? But then the Steelers, through their own ways of communicating with reporters, made known that they've really liked this player for a long time, and they were deliberate in pursuing him specifically. This wasn't like a consolation prize they'd reached amid negotiations. And when you see Jackson, he's not Levi Wallace. And I'm not taking a shot at Levi here. I feel like I liked his performance better than most people did, but he was just, quiet, went about his business. And if you're in that line of work, that's actually okay. Bearing in mind that a certain Darrelle Revis's finest efforts came in which his name would never be called, because no one would throw his way. Jackson's been given the toughest assignments In camp, he's had most of George Pickens. He's had some of Van Jefferson. He's had a lot of deep balls. He's been sent flying down Chuck Noll Field, and he has relished it. Hasn't always won, but he's welcomed the challenges. That is such a big part of that specific role on an NFL defense. You have to want it. You can't fear it. You have to be able to bounce back. It's the closer who gives up a home run in the 9th inning. You got to come back the next day and say, Skip, give me the ball. Jackson's got some fire to him. He's got more athleticism to him than what I had realized, but a lot more dynamism, and I'll take that. I'll take attitude at both of the outside corner positions. I'll take island-type coverage if the Steelers are fortunate enough to get that at both outside corners, because if you can achieve that, then you're freeing up Minkah Fitzpatrick in the middle of the field, and that is everything as it relates to this defense creating takeaways. I appreciate the question. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Steelers, and we'll be back with another one of these tomorrow, maybe about Aiyuk again, right?